So the words that we use, and this is why, in the beginning there was the Word, and the Word was God. No, the Word was with God, and the Word was God. I mean, the word for word in Greek is actually logos, from which the word logic comes from, and from which the Latin ratio or ratio comes from. It's all connected. So whenever, a dictionary is basically a way of reducing, compacting aspects of reality in a meaningful way. When you define something, when you define a word, you're literally putting limits to a tiny aspect of reality so that you can identify some essential elements that later on you will use to separate from things that are either similar or quite different. I say the word dog. Do you have a dog?
I used to.
Who has a dog? Okay, what's the name of your dog?
Sophie.
Sophie, perfect. So can you think of Sophie right now?
Yes.
Okay, describe to me briefly, Sophie.
Small.
Small, color?
Fluffy. White and gray.
Oh, perfect, okay. But if I say the word dog, you can think of any dog without the particular properties Sophie possesses. Right? So we have that ability to abstract concepts, and in philosophy we call that the universals. Where are those universals? Really? How is it possible that we can actually talk about Sophie, a dog, and dog in general without getting all confused? So this is something that is only unique to us in the same way as our awareness, the awareness of ourself. It's something that can only apply to human beings. The great mathematician Gödel basically said that the whole world is rational. And before him, many centuries ago, there was another philosopher who actually said the following thing: the world is basically made of numbers and harmony. How is it possible that we can actually recognize the rational structure in the universe that perfectly match a rational structure within our mind? That's amazing. But we can look at the stars, and we can look at galaxies, and we can even see the light of some stars that have disappeared millions of years ago and feel still their effect. How is it possible that we can think of, say, Plato and Cicero and people that don't even exist anymore, that died thousands of years ago in a matter of seconds? We have that access. So scientists, specifically neuroscientists, have not been able to discover, and think about this, they have not been able to discover how consciousness emerges from brain activity. So matter doesn't explain the contents of your thoughts. Matter does not explain the content of your feelings. You cannot explain love in terms of neurochemical reactions in your body. You cannot explain the content of your thoughts in terms of neuronal activities in certain regions of the brain. You can see the activity. A CT scan or an MRI could literally show you certain areas of your brain being stimulated. But neuroscientists could never tell you what you're thinking at the very moment they're studying your brain. So there are limitations. And we're not even talking about moral issues. I think that was the topic I covered in the first talk I gave here, right? Moral relativism. That's my specialty. So if you want to talk about morality or moral principles, I teach moral theory. Come anytime to my office. I'm pretty friendly. I love talking with people, so don't be afraid. Any questions? Okay, no, really. I'm open to questions now. Yes?
Can you maybe just sum up or recap, based on the typical conversation that students on this campus would have with each other if they came across someone that's basically, what are the arguments that new students, freshmen,
They have to deal with,
sophomore,
right?
whatever they're going to get out of these philosophy classes, what's going to be their...
They're going to tell you that, the following thing, that where is your proof for God? How do you know God exists? Prove to me now, they're going to say to you, that God exists. And they're going to say, well, you know, I cannot know that God exists. You know? I mean, the agnostic view is basically this. I don't have enough evidence for me to accept that a supreme being exists. So agnosticism is basically the position that says, in view of the lack of evidence, I make no positive claim about God. So I say God does exist or God does not exist. The opposite way. So what are the alternatives? Well, the obvious. Matter exists. You can connect with matter. The empirical world is obvious. So they revived, and this is something that the new atheists do. They revived the old. Hi there, somebody there. The ghost. They revived the old argument for the existence of the universe that is based on eternity. So the universe is eternal. It doesn't have a cause. It always existed. And the Big Bang is nothing but, in a way, a process in the evolution of the universe expanding and then doing the opposite movement, the big crunch, they call it. So you have the Big Bang, and then at one point in the history of the universe, the momentum will be lost, and there's going to be like a pull in the opposite direction, and the whole universe will recollapse into its original state, and that's basically the whole history of the universe. What proof do they have for that? None. These are all speculations that we do seem to have proof for the Big Bang, which literally marks the beginning of time and space in our history. And that could be seen as the argument for the moment of creation. That's what we believe. And that's basically what makes sense to any reasonable person. So they would argue that the universe always existed, and that, for example, life on our planet emerged as the result of certain forces combined in a more or less orderly way. They call it natural selection. And of course, there are many things that you can actually explain through natural selection. There's no doubt that you can actually explain how certain species come from some other ones. But when it comes to the origin of life, let alone the origin of the universe, or God, an empirical, a scientific theory won't do the job. It's the wrong method. That's what you need to insist on. And, as I said, insist on the fact that we are rational beings. An effect cannot be more than its cause. It can be less or equal, but never more than its cause. Do you follow that?